Good evening, everyone. There we go. Now I'm getting both ears. Hi. All right. We'll wait another minute or two. Hopefully there will be some more people coming by. Yes. And I'm recording this one. All right. Welcome to Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum, Monday Audio Talk and More series. We do this most Mondays as I'm available, and it's a fairly laid-back conversation, Q&A, talk, lesson plan about doing live production for in-room and for live streaming. We cover a lot of the basics, we cover some of the specifics, we cover the equipment, we cover the technology, we cover the practice and the procedures, how to do really how to up your game when doing audio production, video production, live streaming. And we always leave time for open questions from people who come, as well as cover the topics that we plan to cover today. And today is going to be a special day because we have two guests with us today. We have our old friend David Paskin, the Torah tech guy, who is who is going to talk with us today about Companion for Stream Deck, as well as Jeff Widgren, who runs the Zoom Test Kitchen every week, and is an amazing resource if you want to know about what Zoom has been up to and what the new updates are going to do for you or capable of doing and how they'll change things. The Zoom Test Kitchen is where you want to be because he goes through every update thoroughly, and we talk about it, we demonstrate it, and we see how useful it is or not. And then there's always feedback that goes back to the Zoom team, so it's always a good place to be. So welcome, everybody. We have Henry, we have John, we have Scott. All right, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Why don't we jump into this right away, and then we'll hold out for questions later. So, David, you've been working with Stream Deck for quite a while and with Companion, and you've done some remarkable things. And I invited you here because I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell our group about kinds of things that can be done. That you're doing them for worship services, and you're doing them for other clients as well, right? So you're controlling how Zoom is working and the gallery. So tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's good to see all of you again. I've been away. It's really, really good to see you. Yeah, so I jumped on the Stream Deck bandwagon just like everyone else. And when I started, I was using the typical Stream Deck, the native software here, which is fantastic. It allows me to navigate and use Ecamm, which is my production suite of choice. I'm able to control Zoom from here, and I have different Stream Decks to control different things. I quickly realized that the functionality that the native Stream Deck provides, even with all of the apps, while it's fantastic, simply doesn't compare to what can be done with these tools. And specifically with the use of Zoom OSC. For those who may not know, Zoom OSC is another Zoom client created by Liminal Entertainment Technologies, which was acquired by Zoom. So they now work with the Zoom team. It's a listening client. So what that means is that it basically joins the meeting and it just pays attention to everything that's going on. Who's talking, who's muted, who isn't muted, what are they all working on, what are they doing, whose hand is raised, and using that protocol, the OSC protocol, and another app called Companion, it takes what the Stream Deck can do and it just blows it through the roof. So whereas I can relatively easily press the mute button here on my Stream Deck, this guy, you can't really see it, but it's down there. This guy right here is my mute button. That will mute me in Zoom, fantastic. But what if I wanna know who's speaking? Maybe it's not me, and I wanna know who's speaking, who's making noise. Well, for that, you have to use Companion Companion and Zoom OSC. So this is what the Companion sort of interface looks like. And you can see that I'm logged into this Zoom meeting with this Zoom OSC client. And I don't know how well you can see it, but you can probably see your name up on these buttons and in varying colors. So you've got red, you've got white, you've got blue. Blue means the active speaker. And incidentally, for what it's worth, you can change any of these colors, any of the backgrounds. Blue means active speaker. Red means their mic is unmuted. White means they're here, but they're muted. They're just kind of here. If someone were to raise, but
oops. Okay, we lost you there for a second, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So if someone raises their hand, you can see that I get that feedback right on. Let me actually just clear the selection so you can see it. You can see that little hand feedback right there on the button. It automatically selects them so that I can then take actions on them. So I would say the first huge benefit of using Companion with Zoom OSC when it comes to managing a Zoom meeting, the first huge benefit is, let me lower this, there we go, is that I get real-time feedback on my Stream Deck of who's where, who's speaking, whose camera is open, whose mic is open. All of that data, because OSC is listening for it, is reflected right on the buttons. And I can see with a glance in real time what's happening in my meeting. I don't have to open the participant panel and look for the little microphone button and all that other stuff. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what it allows us to do with that information. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and select myself. When I select myself, you can see I turned yellow. Now, the way I selected myself was I saw my name there and I was able to just press that button, turn yellow. And now I have a button over here that says full stage or stage full. And what that's going to do is it's going to put me up on stage full. If I want to clear the stage and I want to invite everyone to go back to gallery view, I can press clear stage and we're right back to gallery view. If I want to select a few people, maybe to have a side by side, I can select myself and Marty, and I can click add to stage, and both of us will come up on stage. Now just try and remember what it's like to manage spotlighting when you're not using a Stream Deck, when you've got the participant panel open, or you're trying to find those, what is it, the three little dots or whatever it is in the top right corner of every person's. It's not impossible. It's incredibly frustrating and very labor intensive to try and manage spotlighting and things like that without using these third-party tools. Well, Zoom OSC is no longer third party. It is now part of Zoom, but using Companion to help control that. So when it comes to spotlighting, fantastic. If someone is making too much noise, right now I see Marty's mic is open. I can select him, and I can toggle mute his audio. And now he's toggle off, and I can toggle it back on. Now, because I don't have permissions in this particular meeting, he probably got a pop-up that said, hey, David wants to unmute you. So depending on the permissions and how the meeting is set up, determines what actions you can actually take. It's not just actions on individual folks. So you can see here that I've got all the different people in this meeting set up. I can view them differently. I can view them in the gallery view. I can also view them by index. So how they're indexed in this particular meeting. I can also look at who are all of the hosts in this meeting. Let me get to our host. There we go. So Zoom OSC and Companion will automatically create a group for me of everyone who is a host or a co-host, which makes it super simple. If I know that all of my speakers perhaps are co-hosts, I don't need to pay attention to anything else. I just go to my host page and I've got all of them right there. I can also create my own groups. So let's say I want to put Marty and actually I'm going to go back to the gallery view here, and I'm going to choose Marty and myself and Jeff, and I'm going to add us all to group 1. Now that's not going to make a change on your end, but on my end, it did. It actually put them into group 1. There's Marty, David, and Jeff right there. And so again, if I'm leading a service, if I'm doing a class, something like that, and I want to, before the event starts, I want to organize my participants or my speakers into groups so that I can take group actions. So now I can select this entire group and I can do a 3-up on stage by pressing 2 buttons. I selected the group and then I pressed add to stage. Really super, super powerful. And the last thing I'll show you, actually second to last thing I'll show you, is the sort of, they're not really universal, but the more universal or group actions. So for example, on this page, I've got an admit all button. So if I'm watching the waiting room and I want to open the doors up, I can admit everybody who's in the waiting room. If I want to make someone a host or revoke co-host, if I want to start cloud recording, local recording, if I want to allow people in a meeting to local record, or if I want to allow them to unmute or not allow them to mute. I can manage breakout rooms from here, and I can kick bad actors out as well. And then finally, I can just leave the meeting. When I am running meetings myself, I have you can see the button that says, the 2 buttons at the top that say join. Those are the 2 meetings that I join the most often. I just press that button and it automatically takes me to that meeting, passcode and everything. Super, super helpful. The last thing I'll just share with you is multi-actions. And this is, boy, is this, if you're new to Companion and OSC and you've managed a Zoom meeting before, this may just blow your mind. So when I choose someone, let's say I'm going to select Marty, and I add him to the stage, I press the add stage button right over here. There are actually a number of different things that are going to happen. So let's take a look at these. So the first, well, actually, so this is a reference. So let me go to the actual page. There we go. All right. So a number of things are going to happen. First thing that's going to happen is it's going to add him to the spotlight, right? He's going to spotlight him. Second thing is it's going to unmute him, or it's going to invite him to unmute. Third thing is it's going to lower his hand. In my workflow, the way I usually am teaching, if people want to say something, they usually put their hand up. And so I want to lower that hand automatically. It's then going to clear selections, because remember, in order to get all this to happen, I had to select them. And then it's going to set my OSC machine back to gallery view, which is the state that you always want it to be in, so that you can accurately see where people are in the gallery. So with one button, or I should say 2 buttons, I'm selecting the person and then I'm doing all these actions, and I'm pretty sure Jeff is going to show you a way to get rid of that second button press and just do it in 1 button press. I can execute 5 different actions with 2 button presses. And to kick it up even one more notch, and I hope I'm not going to steal some of Jeff's thunder here because Jeff taught me this. I have a trigger set. Now, what a trigger means is that when something becomes true, do these things. So this trigger says when someone raises their hand, which means by default that they're going to be jumped into the first gallery position, right? When you raise your hand, if someone raises their hand, they're going to jump up to the first gallery position. So when that becomes true, when there's a hand raised in the first gallery position, what do I want it to do? Well, I want it to select that person, and then I want it to send them a private chat message that says, get ready, you're up next, don't forget to unmute. I just love this so much. It has absolutely transformed the way that I'm able to manage my Zoom meetings. One of the things that I've been telling people recently is that, I've got all these screens in front of me, and I've got Ecamm over here and Zoom over here and this and that. I almost never look at the controls on any of these screens. It all happens with my fingers on these buttons. I rest my fingers on these buttons. Every once in a while, I glance down to make sure I'm hitting the right person, and I'm just able to execute everything seamlessly. It's just fantastic. And the last thing I'll say is the ability to customize the way this all looks. So again, if I take you back here to my buttons, the fact that I'm able to customize the way these buttons look. So for example, all of my, for me, and I know that in production I do this is entirely backwards, but for me, green means on stage and red means off stage, because I'm very much green is go and red is stop. And I understand that that's backwards. For me, if I'm putting someone on screen, that means it's in green. And if I'm taking them off, that means it's in red. You can see I've sort of labeled all of these have to do with the stage. Anything with a yellow bar is about selections. Anything with a blue bar is about navigation. You get the idea. Being able to customize this to really make it work for me has just been life-changing. And I learned most of this actually from a lot of playing and from Jeff, who is the sort of the Zoom OSC companion master. So Marty, should we throw it right over to Jeff?
Well, I got a couple questions, and some other people may have some questions for you before we go to Jeff.
Sure.
So I've been playing with, well, first of all, so a lot of this, what you're showing us, this increased control over Zoom, relies on the use of this third-party program called Zoom OSC. Which
technically it's not third party anymore, but it is a different, but it is a different Zoom client. Absolutely.
It's a different Zoom client, which is a subscription, a monthly subscription. It's $20 or something like that, at $20 a month. And I don't know, can you get it through the Zoom website, or do you have to go to Liminal? So Liminal Entertainment is the author of Zoom OSC.
Correct. So it's liminalet.com is where you'd get it. Now, you're right that there is a subscription model for this, but you can get Zoom OSC Essentials for free. It's absolutely free. You don't have to pay a penny. Now, there are limitations to that, as there should be. You can spotlight, but you can't multi-spotlight. I believe there's also some feedback that you may not have access to on the Essentials plan. I've tried actually all the different plans. I tried the Essentials, I tried the Pro, I tried the ISO. For my workflow, which is really just managing Zoom meetings, the Pro, $20 a month it's just a no-brainer. Absolutely worth it.
And then now, so you're running this other Zoom client, but that's not the one you're actually talking on, is it?
Right. Good point. So you absolutely can start a meeting from Zoom OSC. You absolutely can manage your meeting through Zoom OSC. There's no reason why you can't. I choose to use vanilla Zoom to run my meetings and host my meetings. And then I always join my meeting from the Zoom OSC machine, and then I just have to give it co-host permission. So that the way Zoom OSC and ISO for that matter work is that it looks to Zoom and actually to everyone else as if it's recording. It's actually not recording, but that's where the permissions in order to listen to the meeting live. They live under the umbrella of recording. So that's why you have to give it co-host permissions. And the reason I do that, I think, is Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO, as they have come so far in the past 6-9 months. They are still not 100% on par with where vanilla Zoom is. And because I take advantage of a lot of the things that vanilla Zoom offers, like Q&A and meetings, for example, if you have a business account, that is not something I would find over in Zoom ISO, Zoom OSC, as far as I know. So that's why I start and host my meetings from the regular account, and I join with the OSC or ISO account.
And by vanilla Zoom, you mean the regular Zoom client.
Sorry, the regular Zoom client.
So
yes.
you and I'm doing this too, and Jeff is doing this too. We actually have 2 different machines that we've joined this meeting on. The one that we're talking on is the regular Zoom client. And then we have a second machine that is running Zoom OSC, and that's how we get the Stream Deck control over everything. Now, I wanted to go back to your companion interface and some of the buttons that you set up. Where did you so when you go to that interface, it'll look something like this, and this is how we program companion. You would typically see the button menu on the right here like this, but when you go up to this tab called presets, in whatever module it will show you what modules are connected. And here we have Zoom OSC, Zoom ISO, and this gives you a set of preset buttons that you can instantly use, and like select from gallery, or select from participation, manage selection of participants. And so where did you find the stage, on stage, off stage buttons?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. This is Jeff's language. I was not using stage before, but it actually really makes perfect sense. And I'm really happy that I made that change. So the way, let me go, by the way, the reason I have to keep switching pages is one of the nice things that you can do in here is that you can create sort of a template page and then reference these buttons. So what that means is I've got 5 pages. So my gallery view, my index view, my host view, my group 1 and group 2, that pretty much all have a lot of the same actions. They all have full stage, they all have add stage, they all have stage off. I didn't want to, every time I update a button, I didn't want to have to keep doing it on all these pages. So instead what I do is I'm just referencing this button on another page. And so this is my sort of template page over here. So what this is it's single spotlight or add to spotlight. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new button here, and I'll click on the module. And if I go in under pin, spotlight, and view actions, there are a few different options. One is single spotlight, and the other is add to spotlight. Single spotlight will take over the entire screen. If one person is spotlit and then I single spotlight someone else, it's going to replace the spotlight. Add to spotlight will just put them side by side. So right now you can see that I am spotlit. I'm going to go ahead and choose Marty and add spotlight, and you'll see he comes up right next to me. As opposed to if I hit Marty and then did full spotlight or single spotlight, that's why that's the difference between those two. So that's how I set these up: single spotlight, add to spotlight. I don't use toggle spotlight. I do use clear spotlight. So I do have one of the things I've discovered is how important it is to have I'm not sure how to say this on a clean show. Oh gosh darn it buttons in the corners of my Stream Deck. So the top left corner of my Stream Deck is always who is making noise right now. So if someone else were to start talking, that would actually, you'd see that change from David Paskin to whoever else is.
No kidding.
No, that's not the truth. Come on. Uh-oh, I'm looking for my name now. There we go.
There it is. There it is. So I want to know at all times who's making noise. And then in the bottom right, I've got clear the stage. And then on this other, I forget where it is. Yeah. This, let me go back here on my actions page. You see in the top right, I've got leave the meeting, bottom right, kick this person out, top left, admit all. So these sort of safe buttons for me have become really important. So that's where that clear stage comes in.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for David? All right.
You know why they don't, Marty? I was so crystal clear.
Good.
I was so perfect. I left nothing to the imagination.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait, there's more. Well, yeah. So, we've all managed Zoom meetings and we've all done it, spotlighting by mouse and either by trying to search a name from the participants list or maybe hovering over their video square and clicking on the ellipsis and looking for the spotlight for everyone button. That takes time, depending on how many people you have. That could take a whole lot of time. So this puts all of that under your control with 1 or 2 button pushes. It's pretty amazing.
Hey, I'm just curious. John, did you get a prompt in the chat?
You muted.
Oh wait, now he's muted. So wait, watch. So he's selected. I'm gonna go ahead and put him on screen, and now he should be unmuted automatically.
All right.
My only question is this all on a touchscreen computer or is it something else? I know. What are you pushing when you?
Yeah. Really good question. So what I'm pressing it's called a Stream Deck, and a Stream Deck. Are you familiar with a Stream Deck?
I'm not.
Okay, so a Stream Deck is it's actually an incredibly silly piece of gear. It's a hunk of plastic with a whole bunch of little buttons on it, with tactile buttons that you can actually feel. So this is one Stream Deck here. This is another Stream Deck. This is the regular size, the original size Stream Deck. There are 3 sizes. There's a 6 key, a 15 key, and a 32 key. There are other devices that there's a Stream Deck Plus, there's a Stream Deck Pedal. There are other types of Stream Decks, but these are the main ones here. And each of these buttons is also a little tiny LCD screen. So let me pull Jeff up because he's also showing something. What are you showing off, Jeff?
It was on my iPad as well.
Oh, right. Yeah. So what I'm using are physical buttons on these Stream Deck devices. And again, this is all about ease of use and making the facilitation of meetings and learning and what have you, making that easy and seamless. And so having those physical buttons where I can, rest my hand on it and kind of have a sense, I know that the bottom right button on this little Stream Deck is my mute button. And so I just rest my thumb there all day. And if I need to mute, I mute it. If I need to unmute, I unmute it. But having said that, and Jeff, I'll let Jeff show you this, you don't need a Stream Deck. You can run this on an iPad, you can run it on a computer. They have emulators for Companion. So you don't need one, but if you're serious about this work, it may be something you want to look at.
So you can do this you can create these companion pages or button pages and then display them on a web browser. And so this is a web reproduction of my Stream Deck. I've got several different pages here, all of these buttons. Normally they would appear on the Stream Deck 32 buttons at a time, but I can just scroll through all of them. And if I were to press on any button, like I'll press on this take button right here, and it'll come back to my picture, my camera, and then I press it again and it goes back to this other scene that I have in OBS, which is showing this. So all of these buttons are live. Any web browser can log into it. You can also do it on a phone or a tablet. So that's an alternative way of using Companion if you don't want to or have the resources to purchase an actual Stream Deck. They're not very expensive, by the way. The 32 button Stream Deck is about $300, more or less, give or take. The 15 button Stream Deck is about $100, I think it is. And then
I think they were actually just on sale also. I could be wrong. I'm just looking it up for us to see. I think
I've seen them as the 32 button, which is called the XL, close to about $250 at its lowest.
Well, they don't even have it on Amazon right now. They're not even showing the. That's interesting.
Sometimes they just sell out of them.
Yeah, they may have.
Be really hard to get.
But the MK2, which is the sort of the newer version of the 15 button, is $150. They do have one, the Streaming Deck Plus, which has not only 8 buttons on it, but also knobs. So, I mean, I would be interested to hear from Marty, because I'm not an audio guy, but I imagine that if you're doing audio work, having those knobs may be really helpful. And then, of course, up here, this is actually an LCD touchscreen, so you can interact with it. So this one essentially gives you 3 different ways to interact with your with whatever you're controlling. For me, 8 buttons is just a joke. I'm waiting for this with 32 buttons, 8 knobs, and 7
Bigger,
LCD
more,
screens.
better,
That's what I
faster.
want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's
But
funny about
often
it,
we
Marty,
use-
is that I actually, I started with a 15 button, then I got a 32, then I got another 32, then I got another. I mean, you can never have too many buttons. You just never have too many buttons.
Right. Yeah, I did the same thing. I started with the 15, moved up to the 32. But as you're showing, we often use multiple ones. And what you can do with those 8 buttons on the Plus, the one with the knobs and such, you can use those 8 buttons to change pages on the larger one. Right. So one Stream Deck can interact with a different Stream Deck. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So now that we've wrapped our heads around what the Stream Deck can do and what Companion can do when paired to the Stream Deck, and how you can use buttons to control so many more things in Zoom by using this alternate client called Zoom OSC. Now let's invite Jeff up to give us a look at some of the even more advanced things that it's capable of doing by using things such as variables and triggers. Jeff?
Matt has his hand up. I don't know if you want to jump to
I'm
him
sorry.
first.
Yes,
or-
Matt.
Yeah, and I'm
Let's
sorry
do
if
that
I
first.
if I maybe missed. Did I miss the first 5 minutes of this or the first hour in 5 minutes? I'm not
No,
sure.
just
What,
the first 5 minutes, and
Okay.
I am recording this one, so you haven't missed out.
okay, great. Because my question was, I looked at Zoom OSC many months ago, and it looked like a whole bunch of programming and complicated stuff. And am I picking up right that now it's a matter of just loading this into your BitFocus Companion, and you start dragging and dropping things? And it seemed like, am I right there, or is it
Yeah.
or a certain amount of programming required?
No,
No.
you are correct. The first couple of versions of Zoom OSC required you to copy the command lines into each of the buttons and manually program it. Now, with the use of the presets, as I was showing,
Okay.
a lot of that is already done for you. So you find the preset that represents the command or the control that you want to have, and as you saw, they were logically laid out so you can find things pretty easily. You drop it into a button, and then you can customize it from there. So
Great,
it
thanks.
is a whole lot easier now. Grant.
Thanks. I've certainly been using the BitFocus Companion and the Stream Deck and stuff, but I'm a little bit odd. I don't use Zoom. I use Microsoft Teams. Is anybody familiar with something similar to OSC for Teams? I mean, I've seen a little bit of programmability, but not a whole lot.
Let me just start by saying my deepest sympathies.
Hmm.
No, the answer is I don't think that there is something like this for Teams. What's interesting to me about the evolution of Zoom OSC is that it is clear that this is not Zoom's target audience. Providing these tools is not the long game for Zoom. Their long game is to be the communication device for everyone and make it as easy and seamless as possible. And yet, the fact that they're investing in this and making all of this possible, for allowing folks like Jeff and the developer of Zoom OSC, Andy Carluccio, and others to kind of create these companion apps. I don't mean companion with a big C, companion with a small c apps, it is really pretty exciting. I don't know that Teams has really made that same investment on the production side, because that's really where this lives. This lives kind of squarely in the production world.
So what makes all this possible is the programming language known as OSC, which is Open Sound Control, which is used as the basis programming language for a bunch of audio consoles, the X32 being one of them. All of the interaction that happens between the X Edit app that controls the mixer through software, that's talking to the mixer using OSC commands. And what Zoom OSC does is it does that translation in its software. It is communicating with Zoom using OSC commands. And OSC is not audio specific. It is a programming protocol that is really very easy to understand. It's just, just syntax.
It's messaging.
It's messaging.
I mean, it's
you draw out
completely
the message in
readable
a specific
messaging.
way,
Yeah.
and it understands.
Not even a full API, right?
It's kind of an API, but not really. An API is specific to a program or a piece of hardware. This is a lot more generic. But Jeff, I'm sure you can talk to us a little bit more about that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it OSC itself is, that first jump that makes it really possible for the world, if you will. It's an easy language, it's an easy syntax and so forth. And that speaks to the actual program called Zoom OSC. Zoom OSC is highly developed or deeply developed to speak directly to the Zoom SDK that they make available to the general public as well. But we don't have to worry about the complexities of tying into the SDK. We can just do it with the OSC side of things. But better than that is Companion, that using Companion and all these presets that that the Liminal team have put together for us. They're all just starting points. They just get you off the ground fast, but they do it one action at a time: spotlight or mute or unmute and so forth. The whole magic of Companion is stacking your actions. And so you want to unmute them, you want to lower their hand, you want to spotlight them, all in one button. And you could in a theater, you could change the lights to this and the soundboard to that. And I mean, it can talk, one button can talk to multiple, devices and so forth as well. So it's pretty magical. And Companion's an open source project. It's a community driven project that, when when somebody has, if you will, a personal affinity towards a hardware solution or a software solution, and if often they'll build relationships with that vendor and get familiar with, do they have an SDK or not? Have they made that available, or an API available? If they have, they may be the individual who goes and learns how to build that module. They're called modules for Companion, so that it's that middle that middle ground between being able to give, let's just say, us the ability to push buttons, and that module to speak to the API of that particular software or hardware. And so it's a really amazing community effort at that. Now, I'll say we're not here to spend tons of time talking about Zoom, but Zoom, and Andy and his team from Liminal, he's with Zoom now, but have spent the last 2 to 3 years influencing and guiding the design of what's called Companion 3.0, which is, I would say, days away from being released publicly, as a release of 3.0. And I know David and I are both, we've both been on Companion 3.0 for probably, I don't know, 3 months, for sure, struggling through its beta stages and bugs and submitting them and so forth. So, but it is it is a huge rewrite, and it's to all of our benefit. It with triggers and not that triggers didn't exist, but they're so much more rich now, and variables and so forth. So it's quite powerful for sure. If we might speak, I'll just start. There's so much to talk about. We could do this. I mean, we're on the Zoom Test Kitchen on Fridays, and we schedule it for 2 hours, and we usually go 4, sometimes 5. Who knows? It just depends on who's there and what the interests are. But Companion does extend it, because there's there's just so many possibilities, and it's really invigorating to be able to build these solutions. Needless to say, let me let me start with I'll just show you one panel that I've built, and this is it's a publicly available for purchase panel, just to be perfectly clear. But I'm not here to talk about the sale of it as much as the design and the grouping. And it's not this is I'll say it's the result of managing a whole lot of meetings over the last 3 years. Meetings sound small, but events as well, really large events for really large companies. And I can use a panel like this really, really effectively, and I do it almost every Saturday for this author out of the UK, and we often are hosting 800 to 900 people in a single Zoom meeting. The fact is you're really not managing 800 to 900 people. It's just a matter of, does the interface that you're working with give you the ability to zone into the people that you do in fact need to manage, whether it's muting or unmuting or spotlighting and so forth. So let's start with I'd like to go over, and review some really common real world just struggles, right? And I think it really helps justify why I've built, it's like 1.5 pages. It's 2 pages. But this view to that view, it's like all the buttons on the bottom are identical, but the top 14 buttons change. And I just want to talk about why. So if Matt or Anders or both, if you would raise your hand, just so we can all see your hand raised digitally. So Matt's hand is up, and somebody else can join in too. So we got John. All right. So the hands are up. It's very dynamic, right? And it senses that is the case, that your hand is up, like David described, being muted or unmuted, active speaker, and so forth. All those things are in place. I mean, if I selected David, the background turns green, but the hand still shows, and so forth. But point being, there's only 14 people, 14 systems that are logged in. What if I was in that 800-900 attendee meeting? How in the world are 14 buttons representing the 14 participants going to help me any? And that's exactly why I built this page. And I wasn't ready for this one. Usually I have this all programmatically put together. So what I just did manually, because I threw these panels on the Stream Deck last minute, is what David talked about earlier, the multi-actions. And one of his last steps was to set gallery view. I just manually went back on there on my machine and set gallery view to my OSC machine. The moment it's in gallery view, now it has the ability to give me an accurate view of the gallery view. And that is raised hands, Zoom makes it happen, are always stacked from the top left and across, right? So now, even though there's 900 other people in the meeting, I may be in a mode of bringing up guest speakers or questions, right? And even though I only have 14 buttons of management, I've got everybody I need to care about right now in front of me, even on a fairly minimal panel. And and so when it comes that time, I select that first one, and when the previous speaker is finished and the next speaker comes on, I just hit that bottom right button to add a spotlight. And commonly, if I add a spotlight, and this is, well, I have actually David. See where all my buttons say cam off and they're not? It's because companion module has been updated. The OSC module has been updated. We didn't used to have a cam off feedback mechanism. We only had a cam, or no, we had cam off, we didn't have cam on. And so my handwritten message that gets prefixed to the name says off because that's what it had to say before, but the event is on. It's like, so I actually fixed it before talking on the most of the main page, but on the gallery page, I didn't make those changes. So they continue to, improve and give us more stateful feedback, if you will, of events. And so it's that it's like, why would you display it twice, right? And so this page, I don't know if anybody else calls it this, but this page I refer to as, I think David called it indexed, and I call it order of arrival, because that's what it is. I can tell you that, I trump, Jeff OSC trumps, but because that's myself, right? Zoom always puts yourself up top. But after that, Marty was first, David was second, David's other machine was third, audio meter was fourth. Those were the order of in which they arrived to the meeting. So they're very fixed positions. And if we have more, I've got the ability to, we have just not enough to actually page this, but I can page 14 to the next 14 to the next 14 and so forth, and I can go previous and all that as well. There's a small note here on the next page button that says to gallery view. So if you press and hold that, it'll quickly switch the view to gallery view. When you get to the gallery view on the previous page button, you can see that you can press and hold to go to the arrival view. And it just it just gives you all that. So, you know, when commonly the case is you're there as the host, you're first, and then your speakers arrive a little earlier than everybody else. So guess where they'll always be? You know, their order of arrival was, you know, 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, right? They'll always be on this page. Where in the gallery view, when it gets to audience interaction and you have them raise their digital hands and use that feature, that's when you switch over to gallery view so that they stack themselves up on the top left. And then when you you take you know, Matt off, if I remove the spotlight and all, it I think we've got him. Yeah. If I take that off, then you know, I didn't hold it, I should have pressed and held, but we can lower the hands as well and take that off, and now all of a sudden the gallery view itself isn't as useful at the moment, right? Because there are no digital hands, right? And so the participant view, I think, or arrival order view becomes super helpful. So there's
By the way, Jeff, if I could just interject,
Yeah.
one of the things that I've discovered in the Zoom test kitchen and now here also is that when you have multiple Zoom ISO or OSC machines in the same meeting, all trying to control things, things can go a little haywire because all your hands are down and all my hands are still up on my OSC machine. It's just interesting, right? So it's something to bear in mind is don't have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. It's a great point because it is possible, but when you have, you know, 2 or 3, you know, OSC machines make sure that they come in with their delegated and divided tasks, right? So you're not stomping on one another, and but they can coexist. You just have to be a little careful about it. But anyway,
Right, 'cause
so
if I were to change from my Zoom OSC machine is in gallery view now, if I set to speaker view, do you see your machines change to speaker view as well?
no.
No.
See, yeah. So, and what I'll say to that is, if you change to speaker view using a button on a Stream Deck via Zoom OSC, it may feel a bit more empowering. Fact of the matter is the way you do it with a mouse in Zoom without any of the other fancy stuff, Stream Decks and Zoom OSC, the behavior that's created by doing it with a mouse will be the behavior that Zoom OSC has to adhere to as well. It's not breaking any rules. So changing your view to speaker view is not going to do anything globally, because if you did that with a mouse, it wouldn't change it globally either. It's just kind of a local change at that. So it doesn't break any rules. It can't pierce, you know, boundaries that exist in Zoom. It's just a matter of being able to do one action after another, and being able to do it on a select individual. And that's where shortcuts that are built into Zoom stop, right? Is there are shortcuts for Zoom, but it's for the microphone or the camera or that view or this view, speaker view or gallery. There's shortcuts, but not any of those shortcuts can possibly take an individual to do this, and this to them, right? You know, spotlight them, unmute them, and so forth. That's where the SDK that Zoom makes available, that OSC can speak to on that side, that we can put into, you know, a Stream Deck or Companion or whatnot. All of a sudden, that becomes fascinatingly powerful, because my favorite, you know, scientific name of what does this, you know, Companion and Stream Deck do for you with Zoom OSC is it gets rid of clunky Zoom management. It really does. It's just clunky as heck. I mean, if I had to do a 4-up, 1, 2, 3, 4 spotlights, that would be, what did we measure the other 2 weeks ago? 5 clicks, 5 mouse clicks per person times 4 is 20 mouse clicks to accomplish it while the event is live. That's crazy. And comparatively speaking, I can take, you know, select 4 people and hit spotlight, and all 4 of you coming up. There, I task and challenge anybody to make that happen that quickly and easily with a mouse. And it's just not doable. And so the show doesn't get interrupted, the event, the discussion, whatever it is, by doing that, so that you can just easily manage all that really quickly and smoothly at that. So, all right. So if I go through a little bit more on the Stream Deck itself, I'll unselect those. I'll just go through some of the buttons, and I'll start with, so I have a Stream Deck, physical Stream Deck on my desktop. I have 2 of them, like I think David has me beat with 4 of them, but I have 2 Stream Decks XL, so 64 buttons. By the way, a Stream Deck, or Companion, technically, Companion supports 99 pages of 32 buttons. And so, you know, why would you ever, you know, buy a second one or a third one? Fact is it, on one of my Stream Decks right now, I'm managing my vMix to change inputs from, you know, my camera to taking a look at the emulator and popping up the picture-in-picture. That's all on one Stream Deck, and then the other one is actually managing the Zoom functions. What I'm displaying to you right now is the comparison of saying, well, you can do it on a physical Stream Deck. Well, the only reason you'll go spend money on a physical Stream Deck is if you do have an appreciation for that tactile button pushing, and I'm a firm believer in it. But like I showed earlier, the same panel you're seeing on my screen, you can put it on your iPad as well, or you can put it on your mobile phone. What I'm showing you on screen here is it's in an emulator on a computer monitor on my Mac next to me. And so I'm just doing a screen grab of that to be able to display it. But it's fully functional. If I brought my mouse over there and clicked on it, you'll see that it is in fact completely functional on selecting individuals. So it's a management console just the same. So if we start with some of the buttons here, let me go, because Marty asked me specifically to talk about like triggers and variables. And I'll start with the clock button on the bottom left corner of all buttons. It's a display, but it takes advantage of I believe variables as well. I have to double check that, but it definitely takes advantage of you know, triggers as well. So, but the clock button itself, if I in Companion 3.0, they give us the ability to have, what do you want me to do? This is it speaking. What do you want me to do when you press the button versus what do you want me to do when you release the button? Now we can even say, well, what do you want me to do if you press the button for this amount of time and release that button and so forth. So if I press and hold the clock button, on the wrong screen, there we go. If I press and hold that, it goes to my title screen, and it's just kind of a resting place, if you will. If I'm if I'm ready to start the show, event, or meeting, I press and hold it from here, and it takes me to that main page. Now it's a press and hold. It's actually super specific and definable. I prefer about a half a second hold. Feels good to me. It feels like that feels like a long press on a physical button, but not too long at that. But it's certainly not a short press, and so it doesn't become accidental between just clicking on it. Now, if you were here in my office, if I quick press and release this button, my physical stream decks dim and get bright. They dim and they get bright. So the first time you press and release, it dims it to 30% of its brightness. And if you press and release it again, it takes it back up to 100% brightness. And that's just one of those night ops versus day ops, depending on the conditions in which you're working in. Sometimes they can be too bright. And so I just wanted a quick, easy way to make that happen. So if I go back to the title page, you can see that it's changing from a little bit of instruction of press and hold to start, and then goes back to the date and the time, and it just kind of bounces back and forth from those two modes. And then the other that I'll point out while we're here are these three buttons on the left side. Basically, it's saying, hey, tell me what page of your companion or stream deck, what page is the home page, which is this page we're looking at. What page is the arrival order page? And then what page is the gallery view page? And it's asking that, it needs to know that, because when I showed you this ability to jump from, to next page, press and hold to go to that previous and so forth, it needs to know where those page numbers are. And I, as the developer of this, I can't assume that anybody who buys and installs this solution is always going to install them on page 1, 2, and 3. I mean, if any of you have already invested any time in building a companion page 2 or 3, you're already using 1, 2, and 3. And so I may end up on your page 10 or 20 or whatever the case may be. And so I realized that I had to provide a way to tell me and configure. And I didn't want my users to have to go in and go into companion, find the variable, change the value of it, because that's all it's doing, is making that change. So I brought it out front. You can bounce on that button and it just rotates. How many possible pages are there? 99. I got to keep bouncing now, otherwise things won't work quite right. And I'll take this back to 1, but that's how it works. Each one of them does the same thing. If in fact those end up incorrect, I've also a program that says press and hold any of those 3 buttons and it'll reset it to 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so it and all 3 of those numbers are being stored and changed. Their values are changed inside 3 individual variables inside companion. And that's what I'm here to show you as well. So let me change view here. This is a very similar view, but this is the tool, right? This is companion. So if I brought this out to a fuller screen, that's companion. And so we'll take a look first at the home page definition, because they all follow the same kind of logic here. So so if we pick that home page, let's take a look at what it's doing. One, it has, I can show you as a result. You can see, well, that top title must be a graphic. It looks graphical. It's not that. Actually, this whole button is a graphic. I think, let me copy this color real quick. Yeah, so it's a transparent graphic. So the home page, the words home page in the title bar, it's slightly gradient. That's a graphic. The words Stream Deck page number are actually a graphic as well, but everything else is a transparent background. So I created a 72 by 72 pixel button or graphic. And when I saved it or exported it to a PNG using Canva, I told it to disregard the background, no matter what I made that background color in Canva, disregard it and save it as a transparent background, knowing that this is, I wanted to be able to often in Companion be able to change Companion's background color and have it shine through, if you will. So that's just a concept and an approach. So if I let me reset this color. All right. So on the button itself, the graphic says almost all of it, except for the number, in this case, a number 1. And it's displaying that number 1 by referencing the name of this internal custom variable. So if I were to even hand type, let's say the word page, you'll see that now on the button it says page 1. And so now it's this prefixed word page with a dynamic result of what the current value of the variable called int homepage is. And so even if I, change that, it all stays there, but the only dynamic part is the part that follows the page : space, and it changes that. So now if I went in there and did it behind the scenes, I'm looking for this variable called int homepage, and I can go to the variables tab, and here's that int homepage variable, and its current value is a number 1. If I hand change that to a number 11, you can see here that the displayed value is instantly a number 11. If I change it to 22, it's instantly a 22. And so it's being dynamically referenced to a behind the scenes managed value. And then the other important part here to know is when I have somebody using this panel, they're going to they may walk away and come back. That's not a big deal, but they may close Companion. And if they close Companion, then the opportunity to lose that value of the variable that, let's say, they had to custom set off from that initial page 1, 2, and 3 to page 30, 31, and 32. If that's the case, the last thing they want to do is have to reset, because when you fire up companion again, what's it going to start out at? Well, it's going to start at whatever persistent value it left on. And that whole point is the checkbox here. It's important to, if you want that behavior, if you want it to reset to 0, if it's a variable that needs to always start at 0 at the beginning or whatnot, then make it persist and give the startup value of 0. Otherwise, you can just use the variable while you're using the program, and when you're finished, and you can come back. But when you want it to actually have a stored startup value, you want you want to. So I do this when I get ready to ship. I have to make sure everything is a 1 persistent, 2 persistent, 3 persistent, and then that matches my documentation, and then they install it, and they might tweak or change it if they need to. But then when they change it, even if they close companion and come back and restart it, it will have saved their changes as well. So they don't have to experience going through that more than one time.
And Jeff, just before you continue, let's just zoom out a little bit on companion variables. You are showing a page called custom variables. But if we look at, let me see if I can take over here just a little bit and go up to here. So we looked at presets to find commands and strings that are already done for us that we can instantly call and use. There's this variables tab, which for each of the modules that you have loaded in your Stream Deck are already available for you. If I go into the Xair, we can see that there are all of these variables that I can use in a button or in a formula.
Or let me add, because we're going to get there, or when one of those values changes, that event of a change can trigger a trigger or fire off a trigger. And so, every module developer has to rely on values in variables, and that is what you're pointing out here, and they can be used extensively.
And then there's this custom variables. So that's where you created a bunch of variables that you're using for your own application.
Correct. Yeah. So, was that Behringer that you showed? But no matter whose they are, if you go to to the connections or the modules, if I take a look, you have it under the tab. You can also pop up the $sign. My spotlight large enough or not?
Yeah, we see you.
So with that same values, this isn't a different set of values. If I go to vmix, they have just an endless number of variables as well. But it's that ability, and they're super dynamic. I mean, if Marty popped up 1 or 2 representations of the variables and their values of his audio mixer, and he were to physically reach over and change a fader, for instance, you'll see the value of that variable. Even though he's physically changing it, you'll see it change. Most of them are programmed to be quite dynamic, and so they can all be used in conjunction. So if we jump down to the clock itself, and this kind of bouncing back and forth between the display of date and time and some instruction, that is based on a trigger. And the trigger itself, let me look at this one. Time to prompt, yeah. Time to prompt rotation is what I called it. So there's one here that the often a trigger, can I find my experience is if I want to do something within companion based on a value that changed in the module itself. So a fader changed, or it got muted, or somebody unmuted, or whatever the case may be. My event in the trigger, that initial event, is going to be based commonly on a variable change. And so when you say, hey, I want the trigger to be fired off when a variable changes, then you can drop down the list of variables and find them, and you can go, goodness sakes, that's a long list of variables. And it really is. vmix doesn't help at all, because it really has a long list. Sometimes when I'm developing, I just shut off the vmix module. But needless to say, the other way to go about this, if you have an idea of what the variable is called, then you can just start typing. And I don't know, I thought it was called watch. It's not. Let's go with something that creates with start. It doesn't. And so you can go back and reference, but all you have to do is start typing even just a part. Doesn't have to be the beginning of the variable's name. So if we went and referenced a variable really quickly and said, hey, there's a variable in OSC that ends in group 2. And so if I went back to that trigger and I just typed the part of the word or all of the word called group, now at least we have a very narrow list of variables to choose from, and they all end in the word group, or they contain the word group. And if I were to add the number 2 to that, then it takes us down to just the ones that have the word group 2 in them. And so it's super easy to find what you're looking for. And I'll take that back out. But this trigger, the one that rotates the text back and forth, is actually based off of a time interval. And so I said, hey, do this, do whatever I tell you down low every 9 seconds. And so so this says every 9 seconds, if the custom variable, that's my created variable, if this int timer equals 0, then I want you to display, and basically what it's doing is it's changing the text of that button to this message that says press and hold to start. And it tells it which button, and it says on the home page, which in and of itself is a reference to the variable, right? Because I've asked my users, hey, tell me where the home page is. Is it page 1, 10, 20? And so it references that dynamically, and it says, and do this on button 25 of that page. So change the text of button 25 on the home page. And then it sets this int timer variable to a value of 1. Why does it do that is if I go to the other prompt that is responsible for switching it back to the original date and time, this says I do it every 8 seconds, and it says if it's 1 instead of if it's 0, then go ahead and display the date and the time. Now this looks, messy, but it's really not. And this, in fact, is their references to internal variables. So much like Marty pointed out that variables can be custom, which are your own created variables and managed values. They can also be module based and or internal, which are the variables that Companion itself manages and makes available. So such as IP addresses, how many custom variables there are, and so forth. But when you take a look, here's all the different pages. But when you take a look at this, you can start to see here that they have several variables that deal with time and day and date. And so I just concatenated the ones I wanted to use that displayed the way I wanted them to display, put some line breaks between them. And when I finished that, I ended up with, here's the weekday, and then the internal, it's 2 line breaks. So \n is a line break. So 2 line breaks followed by the month / day / year, and then the time in the way that represents in hours, minutes, and seconds. I'm going to pause and see if anybody has questions or thoughts. Just hopefully we at least get some, kind of brain thoughts flowing and going. You'll know you need a variable when you need a variable. You just will. You'll want to reference something, maybe from this button, but the value you want to reference could only be the result of somebody pushing that button or pushing that button on that page, or you know what I'm saying. So it's it's when you want to reference something like that from another location or at a different time. If I have another example, join. I built a panel in the past that it's a page that allows you to type in a meeting number, a Zoom meeting number, and commit to that, and then type in the password, the numeric password, and then you can save them. So there's 3 memory recall areas. You can tap to recall it, and I imported these pages. I didn't import all my variables for this page, so functionally it's not going to do it. But but if I was on that page, I could simply click on that button, kind of a quick press and release, and it would load those details into the green button that says press for join. And or if the meeting ID and the password that I had just typed in on the keyboard was new, I could press and hold either memory 1, 2, or 3, and it would store those meeting IDs and passwords into variables that would be there till I changed them. And so I could recall them from that day forward as well. So it's when you get into that kind of functionality, you say you've got a device. I don't know, Marty. I'm trying to think of devices as well that
can be a
you
device.
just know that it has a value, and it's on or it's off, or it's level 1, 2, and 3. But now you have a user at the Stream Deck console that has a preference. And you go, can't it just remember? And that's when a variable comes into play. And if I go to this, let's see, I'll do this the hard way. If I press, see, I don't have the variables at all. So when I type numbers, it should in fact populate in this little black box here. But because the variable doesn't exist, it doesn't have anything to display. But needless to say, is as you're typing, it's taking, let's say you typed a 9 and say we type 951 and it needs to be a 9 and then 95 and then 951. And so it's all the same variable, but I'm just, if I type a 9, I'm saying, hey, variable, you now equal that value of 9. When I type the 5, it says, hey, variable, you now equal what you are plus what I just typed. So now I end up with 2 digits, and then finally 3 digits. And so it just adds it. But something like in this case, it's a Zoom meeting ID, something has to stop it, because a meeting ID can't be longer than 10 digits. And so I have a trigger that fires every time you type a number in, and it says, are you greater than 10? Are you greater than 10? It just says, are you greater than 10 digits? And if you are, strip it down to 10, because you're now 11, right? Because that's what made it greater than 10. And it just takes away the 11th character and just keeps you at 10, keeps you at 10, keeps you at 10. You never see it. You just feel that you hit that 10-digit wall, if you will. And but it certainly gives you that capability. So, triggers are a biggie. Variables are essential as well. And then ultimately feedback on buttons, when you're speaking, can you change the background color? But I'll say variables and triggers are all in your control. Feedback, which is essential as well in kind of the state of the meeting or the state of that button or the state of that slider, those are essential. Feedback comes from the module developer. And so they had to have developed feedback for their functions in order for you to leverage it. Otherwise, you're assuming, feedback is real. I'll just say, if the mic is unmuted, when you are told from feedback that it's unmuted, it is unmuted. And the reason I say and describe it that way is if I press a button called mute, I can also set a variable that says I'm muted. But those two things aren't technically the same. The variable called muted, yes or no, or true or false, is not true or false because my mic is muted or unmuted. It's true or false because I told it it's true or false, because I think that when I pressed that button, I was unmuting. You know what I'm saying? So it's not active state when you get super creative with variables. Feedback is active state. And so those two things together, they can be combined, but simulating status, I've done it, and sometimes you can get by with it, but feedback is great. But variables, I'll ask if any of you, Marty, have there been inquisitions of, if I could only do, and you think it could be done if we understood variables or if we understood triggers or whatnot? I mean, any examples there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just beginning to play with it myself. Hosting meetings with, trying to spotlight 1 or 2 or 3 people, as I said before, you're trying to find their name in the list and push the buttons and bring them up one at a time. And it's just very laborious. And if it's a fast moving meeting, then, you're spotlighting something for somebody for, 5 or 10 seconds as they're answering a question. And then you've got to, unspotlight them and go somewhere else. So this makes it much easier. And, you kind of indicated this, but you can also put buttons for up and down volume level on a particular channel on an audio board. On an audio mixer, you can control the fader level, and you can do it in small increments or in larger increments. You can, depending on, I don't know this for sure, but if the actual level on an audio input or channel exceeds a certain amount, it can change the color of a button to tell you that you're in danger of clipping.
Absolutely.
Something to grab your attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I that last one I think is a is a is a great, it's pretty advanced actually. It's like a, if the module developer provides that feedback, which is, the active value of the level, you've got a variable. I mean, that's where they're putting it. So they're injecting that current level of that fader in their variable. And so if you have a trigger that's based on a variable's changed value, and it changes, but the condition is finally met, because the condition says if that variable is greater than, let's say, 85, then change the text. You might stop it. You may go, hey, no, I just want to kill that behavior. So don't let it go higher than 85. And because you can change, you can, if somebody keeps pushing it to go to 90, 95, or 100, your trigger just keeps nailing it down to 85. And so you've capped them. And so you can create a visual result, or you can create an enforceable result as well, and so you can pick and choose on that. But
one of the things that I just thought of, we use PTZ cameras a lot, and it can take some time for a PTZ camera to finalize a change in preset, because it's moving, pan motor, a tilt motor, it may be moving a zoom motor, it may be changing focus, it may be changing iris level. There's a lot of things that could happen during a scene change. And you could, depending on the camera and the amount of feedback that it offers, you could detect when that preset is fully arrived and is settled down, and then trigger the scene change in your video switcher, and not before and not after. So it would be automatic. Once the PTZ camera arrives and is settled down, it could do your scene change for you, right? So let's take a little bit of a pause. We've covered a lot of information here. A lot of new stuff, a lot of really interesting stuff, both in terms of our understanding about what information is available to us and what controls are available to us, as well as what we can do with that information. So let's take a pause here and see if there are any questions. I know that there are some people who are doing some pretty cool things with Stream Deck here. Does anybody have any thoughts, any questions that you might want to bring up? Anything that maybe you didn't quite understand and wanted to get a little review on? I'm not looking at the entire gallery here, so let me just open that up. All right. So I was just, one of the things that I always find difficult about programming the Stream Deck, given all of the things that we could do with it, is laying it out. Where am I going to put these buttons? In what order? How many pages do I need? Can I, is there a way that I can create a row of buttons that won't do anything themselves, but take me to a different place in the Stream Deck so that I can get there quickly? So, I've got, right now on my Stream Deck, I have one page that I've set up that just controls more or less OBS, brings me to different scenes, activates different sources. And then it's got some buttons for, muting muting Zoom, my mic on Zoom. But then I don't always want to do that. So I've got a different button that mutes the channel on my microphone channel on the mixer. So I can leave Zoom unmuted all the time, yet mute the mic on my mixer and no audio goes through. So I've got that. I've also got on this same page, I've got OBS's virtual camera on and off, and I've got Zoom's video on and off. And so this is kind of my base page for Companion. But then earlier today in preparing for this, I went to a different page in Companion and started using some of the Zoom OSC presets to do to lay out participants in the gallery, to select participants in the gallery, to toggle a spotlight, to set the gallery view, set speaker view, and a bunch of other things. But it's not the next page on my Stream Deck. It's like several pages in because I've got other things there. So I went to I opened up a button on my first page, and I put a button there that says, take me to this page directly, right? And then I put another button on that page that says, take me to the first page directly. And they're in the same place. And so I can just toggle back and forth between those two pages very quickly. But then getting to the pages in the middle, I'm going to need to find a way to do that too. So you always need to reserve some buttons on your Stream Deck pages just for navigation, right? So David talked about participant groups, and he showed us a couple of buttons that he used just for navigation. That would take us to certain places. And Jeff showed us how the top two rows of his Stream Deck changed depending on buttons that he pushed, but the bottom rows stayed the same because those were kind of universal static commands that he wanted to keep right at his fingertips. So figuring that out, is a real trick and a real challenge to just figure out how to lay out your Stream Deck to make it useful.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, the amount of time that that I've spent, I always just start just raw functionality. What do I want to be able to do? And so it's just buttons and actions, buttons and actions, buttons and actions, and then then I'll often find some that can be optimized. I go, oh, I can do those two things on one button, or it makes sense to do that with a quick press versus a press and hold on the same button, right? And so it becomes a multifunctional button. So this view that I've got, so what I just did is these pages that weren't functional a little while ago, I just did a quick export of my profile in Companion. It dumps it out to my downloads folder, and I did a full import and reset of my Companion to what I call my pro panels. And so that initial approach, more kind of the consumer approach, is a great starter point, and manages Zoom meetings really well. But this one is a lot more complex, if you will. Not complex as in hard, just a lot more functionality in the sense of people management, group management, and so forth. And this page on the left, this is in fact, it's two Stream Decks, and I have next to me two physical, Stream Decks that are literally gaff taped together. And so it looks just like I'm showing it to you. So the left Stream Deck is Stream Deck 1, the right Stream Deck is Stream Deck 2. And so its starting point is all about, on the Stream Deck 1, is that navigation page, Marty. And that is, I want to see the gallery order. Well, that's its default view. So nothing's going to change there. There's not a good reason why there's not a GP01 there. I don't know what happened to it, but that graphic dropped. But if I want to go to arrival order, see, on on the consumer version, I pressed and held and changed those 14 buttons from, arrival order, the blue buttons, to the gallery view. Here, I keep my navigation page all in one spot, but I'm changing the view. Here's that host group. Here's group 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have 4, but I took it out, I guess. 1, 2, and 3. The thing is with Zoom OSC Pro version, you can create as many groups as you wish. So if you had, a 3-day event with 6 different speaking panels on each day, you could create 18 groups if you wanted to, one for each panel, speaking panel. And that group page is where you would manage that show, that moment of the show, because you really don't care about everybody else. They're just the audience. Keep them muted and decide what you want to do with their cameras. But who you're really concerned with is who you're going to spotlight and unmute and so forth. And so you just change from one group to the next group to the next group, and groups are renameable, so you could even make them friendly names. But you can the point, to Marty's point, of having that navigation page, when you go there, if I go back to the beginning, this initial page that is the top row and the second row of go-tos as well, the moment I say go to arrival, it changes the right side and the bottom of the left side, right? So the bottom actually changed from the go-tos and some local settings to actions that show up on the bottom left. So while I'm looking at a group of people, I'm deciding on the right side which group I want to look at, and that could be looking at them via gallery order, looking at them via arrival order, or looking at the hosts and co-hosts, or looking at custom groups, right, that I've made people members of. No matter who and how I want to look at them, I instantly, below the navigation buttons, have all the possible actions: spotlighting, there's the on staging, off staging, muting and unmuting, and so forth. And so I always have that ability. If I want to go back to that initial page, I can hit that return button that's on the bottom right of the left Stream Deck. And so I don't have to blow out what I'm looking at on my Stream Deck 2. I don't have to lose my navigation bar on the top of the Stream Deck 1, but I can still go back to the other buttons I was looking at, which give me the ability to go to other places as well. And so that's just what takes time. It is, it's when you go to arrival order, what is it doing, and that that is, it's changing the view on Stream Deck 1 to something slightly different. It's changing the whole page of Stream Deck 2, and so it's that took me weeks to polish down, I guess, as far as describing it. It just really, it takes experience. I mean, I've had a few people go live, including myself, in some events with these designs, and it's minimizing how much I'll come back after the event and go change or tweak, but there's still little changes and tweaks that I make. And so it's really through repetitious use and to where you really get that polish on it. And you have something that you can use on any event. You feel comfortable with it. And that's the thing that's so nice, is when you finally get there, is everything's in the same place, and you get really comfortable with where things are located.
Yeah, that's the thing. Making it really useful means being able to get to where you want to go very quickly, familiarizing yourself, and you can't do that any better than if you built it yourself. But you've done a really marvelous job with the color scheme and the graphics. Everything seems to be very easily identified. Were there any questions? I thought I saw a hand go up and then maybe come down. All right.
Yeah.
This is not a question.
Yeah.
But just to kind of in reflection on the earlier conversation about variables, and I'm just beginning to make sense of some of that. And I actually had a big win this Sunday in the situation where I had created, and Marty, you might have some thoughts about this, a Stream Deck layout that used presets on the mixer that basically recalled the presets on the XR18. And so we set those up in rehearsal, and the buttons are basically the various pieces of the Sunday service, ringing a bell, prelude, opening words, lighting the chalice, so on and so forth. And so you press one of those buttons, and each button has its variable, its color set by the variable of the global preset value of the mixer. So you could tell which button had been pressed last, and it was reading it out of the mixer. It wasn't an internal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say this was a win is we had just set this up last week, and this week, the person that was supposed to do sound on Sunday was sick. And I asked a person who never did sound before to just press the buttons in the right point in the script. And it was sweet. It worked really well. And they were also doing another job. They were doing the teleprompter stuff. So they were kind of doing two things at once. We were realizing maybe we don't need as many people. If we can kind of develop some of the Stream Deck, smarts, we might be able to cut down on some of our requirements. But yeah, it saved our bacon.
Oh,
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, even the intimidation factor, I mean, your qualified candidates list gets longer when you have just a easy interface to approach and not a deep skill set, right? And that's good stuff. Great stuff. Yeah. It, as far as design, I was going to say things that I've kind of learned along the way on design, because I don't think I'm definitely not an artist, that's for sure. I leaned on Canva a lot. I've been a Photoshopper, but not a creator, and not a color scientist by any stretch. But Canva helps a lot. I've got some great tools, but even color guidance. But these title bars, the title bar colors, I commonly use as groupings, if you will, where the text in those are kind of primary action and or stated position. And I'm still really kind of trying to wrap myself around it all. But you can see I've got some pages here. These aren't done. I've got all the buttons designed. I haven't been able to get them all applied yet to this particular version. But needless to say, it being able to change the text and so forth, it just takes time. It just takes so much time. But I'll say, parting words, if you're referencing a value or more than once, twice, three times, should probably be in a variable, so that you can centralize a value that's referenceable from anywhere at any time. If you, same thing with, David had mentioned it earlier tonight, but when you have when you have navigation, you see on my right, the number 2 Stream Deck, even though I'm changing, how I'm looking at, in the groups of individuals, the bottom bar is the same. And that's, on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. If I decided I needed to make a change to, the select this group button on the bottom of 2, I'd have to change that to every button. And whether it was a change graphically or the text it's displaying or even what it did when it gets pressed, when you have that repetition, because navigation remaining consistent commonly means that navigations, can repeat itself, right? Visually, right? So it's always available. It's not always a left thing or a right thing on 2 Stream Decks. So sometimes it finds itself at the bottom, as you can see here, as well. Point being is when you get to that point, I'm just saying, someday down the road, whenever that day hits you, let me find the page real quick. I've got a page called Master Icons. Those should look really familiar. And I need to change my view here. Hang on. Not mess things up. Okay, so this is a view of a page called Master Icons. This is where if I had to make a visual change to one of these buttons, say off stage. Here's off stage. I
don't think we're seeing that.
Yeah, I need to.
This is where it becomes very meta.
Yeah, exactly. That one, that. Okay, that'll get you both. All right, so I'll click on the offstage button. The offstage button has no title, okay, and it shouldn't because it's a graphic. But if I were to just type in, the word Jeff, and then I went back to pages that had that button. There you can see Jeff. There you can see Jeff. There you can see Jeff. All these pages are referencing that button. So I only have to change it in one spot. And these buttons, they have no style applied. This color I assign here means nothing to this button because where it's getting its style is under feedback. And what you do is you add what's called internal button feedback, use another button style. And so you tell it, where's that button? And you tell it on that page at that position, that's the button I want you to inherit the style from. And then it says, well, what do you want me to inherit? And I've told it in this case, everything, but the choices I have are text, font size, PNG, text alignment, PNG alignment, color background, the top bar, and image buffers. And so I'm just saying, inherit everything that button has. Notice it doesn't say inherit its actions. It doesn't inherit actions, but I can tell. I don't think I've done it to these buttons. I haven't, but I can, in fact, I know David does, is I can tell this button that the only thing it does when you press it is it presses that one's button. And so it can bring in, it can ingest style and it can reference as a pointer of what button to push on what page and what position. And so you have this central point of action management and a central point of style management. And then it just instantly distributes itself out to all buttons on your Stream Deck that reference it appropriately. So that anytime you, I mean, and there's still, believe it or not, there's still exercises that feel very repetitive. You know, you do it for this button and that button and that button and that button, and it's a little old. And so anytime you can try to save, you know, that repetitive effort, it can be worth it. But it takes
Yeah, like I've
repetition
got a
to
mic
cause
mute
the
button on every
exhaustion.
page.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, you'll do it enough times repetitively to where you go, oh, Jeff said I could do this, you know, and reference it. And then you'll force yourself to go do it. But it's not natural. You know, it's not the first thing you'll do usually, but it's something you can very easily grow into. If you have multiple stacked actions, don't ignore these green toggles on the right side. If you have multiple things happening, you can now, you didn't used to be able to do this in Companion, but you can disable individual actions that are stacked. You used to have to, during troubleshooting, if something wasn't going right and you want to just make sure that that's happening and then that's happening, you know, you used to have to delete what you stacked and rebuild it. Now you can just simply disable all of them, confirm one, then turn the next one on, then turn the next one on. And so they've really done some really, really, really great things. The last thing, I have to go. We got to take my wife out for her birthday dinner. But the last piece I'll point to is if I can find it. It's it's ending the meeting. Oh, it's under actions. And that is, for instance, somewhere, I don't see end the meeting there. See if I can find end meeting. Anyways, it's a multi-step approach. So, you know, do this when you press it once, do this when you press it twice. It's a step 1, step 2. So it's page 21. See if I can get there on my physical Stream Deck. So with this, ending a Zoom meeting is a pretty real decision if you're the host, right? And so you don't want to like even to just make a button that says end meeting. It's kind of risky. It makes you nervous. Makes me nervous to think somebody can press that and have it have the wrong thing happen. So when you press that the first time, all it does is change the background color and displays a little text that says, basically, if you're serious, hold this button down to confirm, right? And so now I will press and hold, and it says meeting ended, and it would have abruptly ended the meeting. If I go through that again and I press and release, it says hold to confirm. If I go, that's not what I wanted to do, just press and release again, and it'll cancel and abort the rest of the actions. And so all in one button, you can manage multiple steps, if you will. And so step 1, just simply changes the color, adds a little text. Then it moves on, because I told it to progress automatically, and then it moves on to step 2. Now that we're on step 2, they're either going to press quickly, and I'm going to display cancel and set the background color back to black and the text to white, or if they press and hold for 1500 milliseconds or 1.5 seconds, then it will actually cancel or end the meeting. And so I couldn't, when I first saw 3.0 Companion get released to beta, I had no idea what I'd use step 1 and 2 for. And I really had no idea what to do with like durations, but they have become my absolute best friend, because you can have it auto advance steps, or you can say, don't auto advance. I'll tell you when to go to step 2, or I'll tell you to go from step 1 to step 3. So you can control what steps it's on based on what the user presses or how long they press or whatnot as well. So
And how
there's no,
many steps can you do? on a
I don't
single
know.
letter?
I mean, there's no known limit at this point that I'm aware of. But yeah, so they used to have latch, right? So
Mhm.
you could press and release a button and it would kind of keep it open, kind of like a walkie-talkie would be a press and hold. So you press, but when you release, you're done. But if you latched it, it would keep it in, and then you press and release again. Latch is gone, but it's been replaced with steps: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and really gives you just a ton of flexibility. So anyways, that's all I've got. We've got to go play some pickleball and have some dinner and wish my wife a happy birthday. But it's been great spending some time. Hope it's created a lot of thoughts anyways. And if you need my panels are primarily built around Zoom because it's what I do at the Zoom Test Kitchen. But if you're interested in that, certainly feel free to reach out and get my contact. Marty, you're absolutely free to share my contact info, with anybody
Tell us
here.
when we can tune into the Zoom Test Kitchen.
Yeah. So the Zoom Test Kitchen is, we meet. We've been doing it for going on 3 years. Every Friday afternoon at 3:00 Eastern time. And, we usually it's scheduled technically for a couple hours, but, come when you can. And if you have questions, if you're preparing for an event, you just want to dig in and listen, we stream to YouTube. You can simply listen if you want to, but if you want to come in and, if you ask me to be a co-host, you can be a co-host to test things out. I mean, it's very comfortable like it is in this meeting. It's hang time, it's a workshop, it's, talk about some of the newest, greatest, and latest, and so forth. So always welcome, and lots to be learned, that's for sure.
Well, wow. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was incredible. Variables is something that I knew they were there, and I knew that they are useful, but never really fully understood how to use them, right? And so I feel like I've got a bit more to go on now, and which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And variables are all about values, right? And one thing we didn't show at all, but just to understand as a walk away, that when you're managing variables, you're often dealing with values that maybe you need to even have some conditional thinking and results pressed against. And in Companion, it supports expression language. And so you can say, hey, if this equals that, return this, otherwise return that. Or if this is true, then make that variable a 10, otherwise make it a 5. And so you can have some conditional expressions, and math, order of math is as familiar as we would assume it to be. You can concatenate strings, you can convert you can confirm integers. I mean, depending on if you've programmed and have some of that thinking and or have that need to kind of tie things together, it supports that as well. Now it's getting deeper than drag and drop a preset, but it is quite achievable. So all right, I'm gonna run.
Very
But Marty,
cool.
thanks for the
Thank you.
invitation, everybody. Good to spend some time with you. Hope it was helpful, and we'll come back again.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff Widgren, and thank you to David Paskin for showing us what he's been doing with his companion in Stream Deck, because I know he's a very busy guy. He's managing lots of meetings and worship services and such. And he's very good at it. Jeff is very good at it. And I'm still learning too. So
Well, we all are.
we all are, right? It could, and even when we learn this, there's going to be another update down the road somewhere. And it's going to give us even more to work with.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. If there are any other questions about either Stream Deck or about any other issues that you'd want to talk about, we'll open it up to the floor for open questions and see where
All
we
right.
go from here.
Have a good night.
Thank you,
guys.
Jeff. Take care.
You bet.
So yeah, this past weekend was my wife's 60th anniversary. We threw a big party for her, catered. It was at a brew pub, and we hired a band. Some of our friends came and played. It was great.
Marty,
Henry,
I don't have to solve this right away, and it's getting kind of late. But I've been trying to upgrade to the latest companion and OBS, and I can't get them to work together. So I'm missing something. I don't know what it is, but I'll need
glad you
to.
mentioned that, because I had an issue with that too. I loaded up Companion and with the latest 2902 OBS on Windows, and could not get them to run together. The OBS module and Companion would just keep crashing. And so I was working with one of the developers, and we found out what the problem was, and there will be a beta update, hopefully by the end of the week. The current version that I'm using is 3.00 plus 5810, and then a beta something or other. But the OBS module that I'm using is something that he sent me to try out. So it's not publicly available yet, but keep an eye on the beta builds in Companion.
Okay.
And as soon as you see the next one come in, download it. You can go back to the stable build if you want to. That should work.
No, it didn't.
It didn't.
For instance, what was it, let's see, a companion
2402, I think it is.
2.3, I think 2.3 is one of them. And I've been using this at the church. That's stable, and it works perfectly with OBS 27 something or other.
Yeah.
But if I upgrade OBS to 29, I can't get them to talk to each other. The stable version of Companion. So I'm missing something. I don't know what it is. It's driving me nuts.
Well, so there are two things you can look at. In Companion, you can look at the log. So let me go and I'll show this to you. Right. So when you're looking at the connections page, buttons, surfaces, triggers, go over here to the log. And then there are these three buttons for different levels of log. So it's warning, info, and debug.
All right.
And it'll show you everything that it's doing. So Zoom OSC configure updated. It's seeing all of this information here. And so what was happening for me was that there was a loop that was going on, that one of the modules or one of the instances or something wasn't being recognized, or it wasn't loading or something or other, and it would just keep going around a loop, and it would finally crash. And the way they fixed it is, when you'll often see this at the beginning when you first load up, you'll see loading a module, cannot find the software or the hardware or something, and it'll stop. It'll stop loading that. instead of stopping loading that, it just kept going, looking for it, and it couldn't
Mhm.
find it. So that was the fix, was getting the program to recognize that something isn't there and then stop looking for it and go on.
Mhm.
The other thing you can look at is in OBS, under the help menu, you'll find a submenu called log files. And there are a bunch of menus there, including the last one is view current log. And that'll open up another window that's showing you
Yeah.
the current log, and will update. So it's an updating version of the log file. And you can see what's happening there. So
Okay. All right. Good.
that could help you, give you some indications as to what's going on. Whether you'll fully understand the log entries or not, as it may be. But it'll give you some clues. And then from there, you can go on to, if you're familiar with GitHub, you can go on to GitHub, which is where both of these programs are developed and posted and stuff. And you can ask questions in there, or in OBS, you can visit the website. The help portal is under the help menu. Go to the help portal. For OBS, for companion, they use Slack for help. So there are help channels available. If you need to help finding one of those, give me a shout.
All
I
right.
can point you to them.
Well, I'll keep poking around. Thank you very much. This was very interesting. I asked you a while back about variables. I wanted to be able to control various aspects of the action of the Stream Deck through a variable investigation, and this has given me a good start. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. I got to run too.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the DVE store for our 1080 Zoom account. Wonderful accommodation between them and Zoom. And join us most Mondays, except if I happen to be working on a job, 6 p.m. Eastern time, right here, same channel, same station. And we'll see what comes up next.
Okay.
All right. So also keep an eye out if you haven't filled out the live worship survey, live streaming survey yet. Go and take a look for that. Fill it out for us, because that's given me some good information that I'm going to hopefully be able to put together and publish. So yeah, some of the responses are really good. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.